AOC calls President Trump a rapist. Gavin Newsom calls Stephen Miller a cuck. And Tucker Carlson calls Jeffrey Epstein a Mossad agent. Lots to get to. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Is President Trump now calling for amnesty for a ton of illegal aliens? That is the allegation, and there might kind of maybe be some truth to that. That would be an unfortunate pivot. We'll get to what's really going on momentarily. First, I want to tell you about Birch Gold. Text Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898. The Trump administration doing a lot of great stuff right now, really making our public square much better, conducing toward the common good. But of course, when it comes to your personal finances, you got to take care of that. That is why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold now from Birch Gold. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. And global instability and tension is the highest in decades. But you can find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or just buy some to store at home. You know, I have mentioned before, I'm a little bit of a gold bug. I got a decent amount of my portfolio in gold, and over the past several years especially, very happy about that fact. Right now, just text my name, Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. No obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, tens of thousands of happy customers, it is time for you to take control of your savings today. Text Knowles to 989898. There's new juicy info on the Jeffrey Epstein story. And I think every time there's new information on the Jeffrey Epstein story, it's the sort of thing where people who have been paying attention to this story and how it fits in with broader politics aren't surprised by anything. Aren't just, of course, this is just playing out over time. But the people who have only been paying a little bit of attention, they say, wow, oh my goodness, this is shocking. So here's the latest breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein story. That video that was released last week, the DOJ video, 10 hours of footage, and then somewhere in the middle, the video kind of skips. It turns out, according to a report from Wired, that the video was apparently modified. So I'm just going to refresh your memory. Do you remember this video? 11 p.m., 11:58, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, wait for it, 55, 56, 57, 58. Midnight. Whoa, hold on. We were just at 11:58, 59. By my calculation, there's a whole minute and 1 second there, and then it just disappears. And not only that, but the frame changes, the whole picture. It's not even like they're subtle about it. The frame punches in. So you say, well, hold on, what happened in that minute? And why did the frame change? And was it just a minute? And wait, what's going on here? So breaking report from Wired.com. Turns out that video was in fact modified. I was waiting for them to have like an iMovie, iPhone iMovie watermark over that really sloppy edit job. It's so brazen that actually I'm beginning to wonder if the people who are releasing this information want us to notice how little sense a lot of this is making. This goes all the way back to last week when the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who's under a lot of fire now, we'll get to what President Trump is saying about that. Will the Attorney General have to resign? But the Attorney General had previously said on Fox News, was asked, so there's a Jeffrey Epstein client list. Are you going to release that? And she says, I have it on my desk. I have it on my desk. It cannot be referring to the files because it is singular, not plural as files is. And it can't be referring to the files because the question that she was asked, it was about the list, not about the files. And she answered directly, said it. So gets out in front of her skis, says, yeah, the list is on my desk. Actually, there is no list. That was the news story. Actually, there is no list, but don't worry because Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. How do we know? Well, all the cameras went out in the jail around his cell. So we don't have the video footage. Except, actually, no, there were cameras, and we do have the video footage. We're going to release the video footage, but actually the video footage is going to cut out right in the middle, and it looks like it was done on Microsoft Movie Maker. Okay. Every time there's new information in the Jeffrey Epstein story, the story only gets weirder. So much so that I was at the Student Action Summit, the TPUSA Summit on Friday. Had a lot of fun. You can check out my speech. I'm sure it's somewhere online. Charlie was posting clips from it. Then I flew out that afternoon. That evening, Tucker took the stage. Tucker said, Jeffrey Epstein worked for Mossad. So he went all the way out there. He said, not only is there more to the story, not only is there a client list, but this was an intelligence operation. Not only was it an intelligence operation, but it was a foreign intelligence operation. Not only was it a foreign intelligence operation, but it was a Mossad operation. So is that true or not? There's a lot of evidence that Jeffrey Epstein had associations with Mossad. So what's evidence number one? His business partner was Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, widely reputed to have worked for Mossad, and maybe also worked for MI6, and also possibly worked for the KGB. But there's one connection right there. Further evidence. Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein, got him that sweetheart deal in Florida. When he was up for labor secretary under Trump, he said that he was told in the Epstein saga that it was above his pay grade because Epstein belonged to intelligence. Okay, that's some information. Some more evidence. He wired all of his properties with cameras and maybe microphones and was filming really rich, powerful people doing weird stuff with chicks. That would be evidence of a honeypot's intelligence operation. Further evidence. He had a business relationship with Ehud Barak, former leader of Israel, and apparently met with Barak many, many times. Further evidence. He was introduced to Barak by Shimon Peres, another leader of Israel. Further evidence. Well, he was obviously meeting with plenty of American political leaders. Not only was he member of Mar-a-Lago, which was owned by Trump, long before Trump was really in politics, but he palled around with Clinton, and so on and on and on. But that takes us a little further afield from Israel to just a broader intelligence op. Okay, so there is evidence that would seem to suggest an association between Epstein and Mossad. However, there's also evidence that undercuts that. In fact, what's funny is some of the evidence that is used to link Epstein to Mossad seems to undermine the Mossad connection. Namely, there are these reports that say that Epstein bragged to girlfriends about being a Mossad agent. To me, that's the biggest red flag. It's like any intelligence organization. If some guy, ladies, this is advice to you. If some guy is bragging to you about how he's in the CIA, the one thing I can promise you about that guy is he's not in the CIA. So if the reports are true and Epstein bragged about being a Mossad agent like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, to me, that's exhibit A, that he actually didn't really have a connection to Mossad. Second piece of evidence that he wasn't connected to Mossad, the relationship with Ehud Barak, the former leader of Israel. It is kind of funny how all of the evidence pointing in one direction can also be used to point in the other. Because Jeffrey Epstein apparently helped finance Ehud Barak, this former leader of Israel, helped back him in a business deal. If Epstein were working for Israel, wouldn't the money be going in the other direction? Why would the money be going from Epstein to a political leader of Israel? It would be going from the political leaders of Israel to Jeffrey Epstein. That's a little bit strange. Furthermore, where does the rubber meet the road? Was Jeffrey Epstein actively blackmailing these guys? Like, hey, Bill Gates, you do what I say or else I'm releasing the tapes buster. Or was it just more a collection of compromise? Was it some middle ground operation? Was it that this was a kind of personal shakedown ring that then got mobbed up with intelligence? Was it just Israeli intelligence, or was it just the CIA, or was it just some combination? The answer is we don't know. There is one other weird fact about Jeffrey Epstein that basically no one is talking about right now, but this is a strange one. There is an article from decades ago, I think it was the New York Daily News, that reported on how Jeffrey Epstein bought a townhouse that had been seized from the Iranians, and he rented the townhouse from the State Department, from the U.S. State Department. And then you can find this. I just retweeted it last night. It's on my x.com/Michael J. Knowles. He was renting it from the State Department, and then he didn't pay his rent. So it doesn't, I don't know. The layers of weirdness to this never seem to end. And so the only story, if you told me Epstein was a Mossad operation, I'd say, okay, I believe that. If you told me Epstein was not a Mossad operation, I'd say, okay, I believe that, depending on the evidence you present to me. If you told me Epstein had a connection to CIA, or he didn't, I guess I would believe that. If you told me he was connected to XYZ leader of state, head of state, or head of government, I'd believe that. The one thing I would say the one story that no one can believe is that he was just a rich guy and he was a pervert and he had all these rich, powerful friends, and those two facts had nothing to do with each other. The one story that no one believes is that the case is closed, he had no clients, there were no further crimes here, move along, move along. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for trafficking girls to no one. Nobody believes that. And yet, that is effectively the government's official story, which is why the Attorney General is under fire right now. Threats that maybe Kash Patel or especially Dan Bongino might resign from their leadership roles at the FBI over this. So is the government collapsing? Are top Trump appointees going to quit? Is MAGA fraying at the seams? We will get to all of that in one moment. First, I want to tell you about Hammermade. Go to hammermade.com/Knowles. I love Hammermade shirts, and I have very high standards when it comes to my shirts, okay? And a lot of modern stuff I hate. But Hammermade I love. These are not your typical dress shirts. They are limited edition, high-quality pieces most guys will never get their hands on. Not something you're going to find in a big box store. It's really, really cool. So not only are the designs neat and they cycle out, and so, it's not going to be the same old thing for years on end, but they're just very, very well made. The cuts are nice. They look really good. You're talking to someone who pays more attention to sartorial things than most fellas. Listen up. Now is the perfect time to order your own Hammer-Made shirts. Because between July 18th and 29th, they got half-price styles and special deals of the day that will give you even more savings on dress shirts, short sleeves, polos, and much more. They don't do sales very often, so take advantage of these incredible deals right now. Go to hammermade.com/Knowles, Knowles. If you're ready to order before the sale, Hammermade is still giving our listeners $50 off your first purchase of $199 or more. Hammermade.com/Knowles, KNWLES. Use promo code Knowles, KNWLES at checkout. Hammermade.com/Knowles, KNWLES, promo code Knowles. Will the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, have to resign? Pam Bondi is the one who went on TV and said, I got the list on my desk. Oh, whoops. Actually, no, there's no such thing as a list. Never mind. Move along, move along. So it's really bad. It's getting a ton of blowback from the base, from very vocal Trump supporters, people who have liked him in the past. Is she going down? Trump has weighed in. He's weighed in with a block of text. So he feels strongly about this. I'll read exactly what he says. He says, what's going on with my boys, and in some cases, gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, Crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration, who conned the world with the Russia hoax, 51 intelligence assets, the laptop from hell, and more? They created the Epstein files, just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me. Okay, hold on. This is a little ambiguous. They created the Epstein files? Is what he's saying here that they were the ones who were in charge of the Epstein investigation when it really got underway, and so you can't trust the files they created? Or is he suggesting they created the whole Epstein issue? The latter, that would seem to be too far. So I guess what he's saying is, well, they're the ones who were in charge when the Epstein files were being written, and so if you don't trust the Steele dossier, you can't trust the Epstein files, which is a much stronger argument, actually. So anyway, he goes on. Just like they created the fake Steele dossier, now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? That's a very good argument. People are sometimes saying, well, including Elon Musk, Trump won't release the Epstein files because he's in them. I was talking the other day on air on TMZ to Harvey Levin, who's a pretty liberal guy. He's not, he's certainly no right-wing conservative. And he said, look, I heard it from good sources that sure, Trump is named in the files in as much as Epstein was a member of his club, and he was probably on the jet once or twice, just like apparently everyone was. But he's not seriously implicated in them. And that's Trump's point. He says, if I were seriously implicated in the Epstein files, they would have released him years ago. They tried to arrest me 4 times, and they tried to kill me. So I think they would have released the files. In any case, he goes on. They haven't even given up on the JFK or MLK files, no matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, a safer world where Iran won't have nuclear weapons. It's never enough for some people. We're about to achieve more in 6 months than any other administration has achieved in over 100 years, and we have much more to do. We're saving our country, making America great again, which will continue to be a complete priority. The left is imploding. Kash, Patel, and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, and arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, so here you are seeing a narrative shift here. You're saying be suspicious of the Epstein files because they were made by the left. Be suspicious of them. Previously, it was we're going to release the Epstein files. Previously, it was the Epstein files are on my desk. The list is on my desk. We're going to release them. I'm reviewing them now. We're going to pass out binders to influencers. We're going to do all. Now it's, hold on, forget those files. They are suspect. They're made by the left. So that's a shift. Then goes on, let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen. Goes on, forget about Jeffrey Epstein. All right. Now, I suspected that Trump would back Pam Bondi because he kind of has to. Right now, you're getting these calls for Pam Bondi to resign. And anytime, you saw this in the early days of the second admin, especially with Pete Hegseth. The left just hated Pete Hegseth. They tried to kill him at Senate confirmation. Then they tried to make up all these scandals to get him out when he was sec def, when he was already installed in the position. And Trump had to back Hegseth. Even if Hegseth screwed up, even if Hegseth left himself vulnerable, it didn't matter. Trump had to back him because all the Democrats were after was drawing blood. And so when everyone is calling on you to do something, even if you might want to do that thing, I'm not saying Trump does want to fire Pam Bondi, but even if you did want to do it, if everyone's calling on you to do it, you can't, because that shows weakness. And the left would be thrilled. They'd be thrilled to get any of these top appointees fired because it would just draw blood on the administration. The administration is going quite well, as Trump says in his tweet. So he says, forget about that. It's not going to happen. Now, this doesn't quell the concerns at the FBI because you're seeing reports coming out. Kash Patel's not happy, head of the FBI, and Dan Bongino in particular, deputy director of the FBI. This is a guy who left an extremely lucrative career, very, very prominent, making a ton of money, really wielding a lot of influence over the American right. He gave all that up to serve his country, to serve as the deputy director of the FBI under President Trump. And Bongino reportedly has been furious over the way that this has been handled and mismanaged. So there were some reports he's considering resigning. President Trump was asked about this yesterday.
Oh, I think so. I did. I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino, very good guy. I've known him a long time. I've done his show many, many times. And he sounded terrific, actually. No, I think he's in good shape.
I was going to ask you, on this one-year anniversary of Butler, what was going to be?
So this is Trump. This is one of Trump's big skills, and it's something the left totally misunderstands about him. They say he's a divider, he's reckless, he's impetuous, he splits people up. No. The guy is a uniter. To use a phrase from George W. Bush, he's a uniter, not a divider. He's a uniter. And he's got to keep the team together. He's a uniter. He brings in new people to his coalition, the Maha hippies and a lot of Hispanics and a lot of black people and a lot of women. And he brings all these people in together. And here, he's got to keep the team together. He doesn't want Dan Bongino to quit. He doesn't want Pam Bondi to be fired. He doesn't want his administration to go down because of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, whether he was just an individual pervert, no ties to any interests, foreign or domestic, in which case you've already got the full story, or Jeffrey Epstein, super duper triple agent for Mossad, the CIA, MI6, maybe the KGB, who knows? He's got every connection around the world, in which case you've got all the information you're ever going to get. Either way, though, as I said, when the administration said there's nothing more to know about Epstein, I said, I'm not surprised about this because any way you slice it, you were never going to get more info. Governments are not fully transparent. They cannot be fully transparent. There is a world in which releasing these Epstein files could do everything from open people up to major defamation lawsuits because you're releasing hearsay about people based on unsubstantiated allegations, unprosecuted stuff. That could be a problem for the government. All the way to this could implicate heads of government, heads of state. It very likely does. And you could see a fraying of the world order. You could see civil wars break out because of this. And Trump, being responsible, says that he can't do it. But anywhere along that continuum, it's going to be very, very frustrating. And Trump just wants to move on. In fact, I said from the beginning, I suspect the person who's most frustrated about not being able to release these files is Trump himself. But that's what happens sometimes. So he's holding it together. I think this seems to be successful. Looks like Bongino's not going to retire, which is good because I love Dan Bongino. And it looks like Kash Patel is not going to resign. And it looks like Bondi's not going to be fired. And they are going to keep moving on. All of that said, this is the biggest threat to cohesion in the second term. Full stop. It's the biggest threat to cohesion. It's the biggest threat to the MAGA coalition because it is deeper than Jeffrey Epstein. When Trump says, who cares about Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who never dies? This guy's a jerk. When Trump says that, he's referring to Jeffrey Epstein, this guy he knew that he kicked out of Mar-a-Lago Club 20 years ago. That's not what Jeffrey Epstein means to most people. To most people, Jeffrey Epstein is the face of corruption, of a lack of accountability, of the dark, nefarious tactics taken up by the deep state and the financial actors and the business interests and the intelligence services and all. He is just the face of this corruption. And Trump was elected in large part, going back to 2016, to drain that corruption out of the swamp. And so if the Trump administration can't claim a scalp on Epstein, if they can't even release some new names, if no one's going to be prosecuted, Ghislaine Maxwell looks like she's in prison for trafficking girls to no one, then it's dispiriting for the MAGA coalition. That's why Jeffrey Epstein matters to them. Again, you're not going to hear me. There are going to be plenty of people on the right who say, and that's why they need to release all the files, and that's why we need total truth. That's not me. I don't think that's true. I totally get it. I am totally sympathetic to the position that Trump is in right now. I'm just telling you, this issue is not going to go away overnight. It's not going to go away because it is a symbol of something much deeper that cuts in many ways to the core of the MAGA movement political identity. And so I think, I've also said from the beginning of this latest episode in Epstein, the administration needs to come up with a more persuasive messaging strategy. It's not, people will move on eventually. They move on from all political issues. They're not going to move on anytime soon. You gotta fix it. You're seeing frustration here coming all the way from the top of the FBI. And Kash Patel, at the head of the FBI, said something very, very interesting that is probably even more profound than he thinks it is. Has a lot of political implications. We'll get to that in 1 second. First, though, I want to tell you about Vandy Crisps. Go to vandycrisps.com/Knowles. Did you know that all chips and fries used to be cooked in beef tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations made the switch to cheap processed seed oils? Today, seed oils make up a staggering 20% of the average American's daily calories. Recent studies have started linking these oils to metabolic health issues, inflammation throughout the body. That's what got the folks at Vandy Crisps thinking there had to be a better way. They decided to go back to basics and created a potato chip with just 3 simple ingredients: heirloom potatoes, sea salt, 100% grass-fed beef tallow. That is what makes Vandy different. Okay? They've not only taken out the bad stuff, they put in a lot of great stuff because that beef tallow is not just packed with flavor, it's packed with nutrients that are great for your skin, your brain, your hormones. Most importantly, it's the most delicious potato chip you're ever going to have. It almost tastes like a different kind of thing. And you don't believe me, you can't appreciate it because my words can't convey to you how delicious they are. You just have to try it yourself. Are you ready to give Vandy a try? They're made in America, 100%, zero shortcuts. You got to go to vandycrisps.com/Knowles. Use code Knowles, KNWLAS, for 25% off your first order. vandycrisps.com/Knowles, code Knowles for 25% off your first order. Kash Patel, head of the FBI, tweets out, "The conspiracy theories just aren't true. Never have been. It's an honor to serve as the President of the United States, to serve the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and I will continue to do so for as long as he calls on me." Okay, I'm not going to quit, not surprising. Love Trump, not surprising. The conspiracy theories aren't true and never have been. Hold on. That's not true. That's not true. Because I'm old enough to remember a conspiracy theory from 5 years ago, which is that the coronavirus, COVID, was not a naturally occurring virus. Remember? When we said that at the time, we were called conspiracy theorists. That one turned out to be true. When we said that the COVID didn't come from a bad batch of bat soup in a Wuhan wet market, that it actually probably came to that really high-level biolab right next door, We were called conspiracy theorists. That turned out to be true. When we said the U.S. government might have even been involved in funding that lab, we were called conspiracy theorists. That turned out to be true. When we said that people like Anthony Fauci were funding gain-of-function research in China, we were called conspiracy theorists. That turned out to be true. A lot of conspiracy theories do turn out to be true. So you can't say the conspiracy theories just aren't true. They never have been. Hold on. You can't tell me that. There are plenty of conspiracy theories that are false. And now we're at a moment, because the establishment has so destroyed its credibility, we're at a moment where people assume if a thing is known to be a conspiracy theory, that it must be true. That is just as dangerous. To think that every conspiracy theory is true is just as dangerous as thinking that no conspiracy theories are true. But I don't know what Kash Patel is telling me here. Some of them are true. I guess he's probably speaking directly about Jeffrey Epstein, saying they were never true. What do you mean they were never true? What's the conspiracy theory? Here's one moderate conspiracy theory. Jeffrey Epstein was mobbed up with very rich and influential people, and they were doing weird sex stuff with young girls. You telling me that's not true? I think that one's at least true. Yeah, well, if that one's true, then how come no one's being prosecuted for it? At least that one's true. You don't need to go all the way to saying Epstein was a Mossad agent. Epstein was a CIA agent. Epstein was the right-hand man to Bill Clinton. You don't need to go all the way to those things to say that some of the conspiracy facts about Jeffrey Epstein were true. And there seems to be some conspiracy here. There was a conspiracy between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There was a conspiracy between Jeffrey Epstein and Ehud Barak. Even if it was just a little business conspiracy, it was a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy between Jeffrey Epstein and Les Wexner, his big patron, his big private sector patron at least. Come on, man, there was some conspiracy. Furthermore, I go even further defending the conspiracy theorists. I was talking to a great friend of mine, very, very mainstream woman, about another friend of ours who was really into conspiracy theories. And half the stuff she said was completely insane, completely nuts. But we were talking, we said, why do we like this girl so much? And my friend said, because conspiracy theorizing is the sign of an active mind. Now, activity is not always a good thing, but at least if you're trying to connect the dots like Charlie Day in Always Sunny, it was this and it was that and it was this guy. And then it's a sign that at least you're thinking. And which you want to be thinking. That's good. Now, when you're considering conspiracy theories, I guess, and this does pertain to Epstein, the one pitfall that people fall into is they become monocausal. Every conspiracy points back to the very same thing. I remember this a few years ago when the World Economic Forum was the big hot topic that everyone was talking about. And every single problem in the world came from the World Economic Forum. Do you remember this? It's all from Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab was the great puppet master who controlled the whole world. Klaus Schwab has done all sorts of bad things and all sorts of mistaken things. The World Economic Forum has backed a lot of bad stuff. The World Economic Forum is not the cause of all the troubles in the world. Now I think we look back at that one, we say, that's kind of silly. Or George Soros. George Soros is a really bad guy. He's done lots of really bad things. He's not the cause of all the problems in the world. Or the deep state, whatever exactly is meant by that. Or the CIA has been involved in some bad things. The CIA has been involved in some very good things too, by the way. All right? The CIA has done some actually really good, heroic things. But they've also been involved in some bad things. You can't say it's all monocausal. Or Israel. Israel is kind of a hot topic right now. Israel has done lots of bad things. Israel's also been on some good things too. It's not, if you're, even for me, the one that I fall into, the one where I start to sound monocausal is when I blame everything on liberalism, but liberalism meaning going back to even the classical liberalism. And liberalism has caused a ton of problems, but even liberalism is not responsible for all the evil in the world. In fact, the only conspiracy theory for which you should be monocausal and which actually does create all the problems in the world is if you go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. That's really where it lies. And when Adam sins, when Eve hands that apple to her husband and they sin and they're ejected from the Garden of Eden and sin and death pervade the world, that is the monocausal creation of all these problems, which is to say it's man's disobedience to God and man's pride to think that he will become as a God. And that problem manifests itself in all sorts of arenas. And that is the cause of the evil conspiracies, every single one of them, in business, in government, in foreign affairs, in domestic affairs, in all of it. That's the problem. But whatever the true story with Jeffrey Epstein, I promise you, it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than Herder, it was the CIA, or it was Mossad, or it was Les Wexner, or it was Bill Clinton, or it was just the Clintons. The Clintons used to get most of the blame for the Epstein thing, or it was Bill Gates, or it was, no. It was probably like everybody to some degree, which is one of the reasons it's not going to come out. But the one crazy conspiracy theory, I hate to, Kash Patel seems like a nice guy, but the one crazy conspiracy theory I cannot believe is that the conspiracy theories are just never true. That's the craziest conspiracy theory I've heard in a long time. Okay, speaking of crime, President Trump is catching flack now, not for any of the Epstein stuff or whatever, but because of a more nuts and bolts political issue. He is being accused of supporting Amnesty. You remember Trump a week or so ago. Trump came out and he said, hey, yeah, deportations are going great. It's awesome. Some of Trump's critics are saying he's not deporting enough. He's not even deporting as many people as Barack Obama. But what that's not taking into account is the Center for Immigration Studies report that came out that 1 million illegal aliens have self-deported, which has been an active priority of the administration. It seems to have really happened if you look at labor force numbers. So in any case, I think deportations are actually going pretty well, especially in the smart way that the Trump administration is going about it. But he said, we're not going to go after farm workers. We're not going to go after hotel workers anymore. And this caused a little bit of a rift in his support. He said, hold on, we voted for mass deportations. What do you mean you're not going to go after farm workers? Are they here illegally? Have farm workers never committed rape or murder or any of the other additional crimes? Hold on, what are you talking about? Hotel work? Why do hotel workers get a free pass? Are you advocating amnesty for these people? Here's President Trump's response.
Toward an American workforce. So all of the above.
We've got to give the farmers the people they need, but we're not talking amnesty.
Trump clarifies, he says, we're not talking amnesty. Now, in a very literal, immediate way, this is a kind of amnesty because you're saying, all right, if you're in these sectors, we're not going to arrest you. He's not saying we'll never arrest you in the long run. He's not saying that you get to stay here, you get some permanent residency status or something. Nothing like that. But it is literally, in the short term, a kind of an amnesty. But Trump wants to clarify, he says, but I am not talking about real, serious amnesty. So what is he talking about? His solution here is basically let them live in the shadows, which is a really positive development in our politics, because I remember during the immigration debates 10, 15 years ago, Gang of Eight, we're talking about a big bipartisan deal to give mass amnesty to a bunch of illegals. Luckily, that was averted. The pro-migration, pro-amnesty argument was, well, what are you going to do for these then 5 or 10 million people? Now it's 11 to 16 million. What are you going to do for these millions of people? What are you going to have them do? Just live in the shadows? Well, one thing we know we can't have on immigration is the status quo. What are we going to do? Just let these millions of people live in the shadows? To which the anti-migration people, the anti-amnesty people would say, yeah, that's better than amnesty. Ideally, we deport them all. But if you're not going to deport all these millions of people, yeah, just let them live in the shadows like they've been doing for decades. Why not? That's great. Then their kids get citizenship. That's great for you guys. That's how conciliatory are we being? Yeah, what do you mean? Why can't we let them live in the shadows? Well, we can't just let them live in the shadows. Why not? But we have to give them amnesty because they're here. We have to give them citizenship because they're here. The let them live in the shadows position, as I recall, was the Ann Coulter position. Ann Coulter is hawkish on immigration as anyone there is and totally right about it. So the positive shift here is, even as President Trump is being criticized for a kind of an amnesty, he says, I'm not giving amnesty. His position that is now considered the moderate to even conciliatory liberal position was basically the most conservative position on immigration there was 10, 15 years ago. Now, I still don't want to go easy on the farm workers and the hotel workers, but that is a good shift. This is a reminder that what happened in November is you had the popular vote won by a candidate who was openly campaigning on mass deportations, not just of guys with face tattoos, not just guys selling fentanyl, but abuela cooking rice. Okay, hardcore mass deportation. That won 46% of the vote. Now the left-wing position is let them live in the shadows. That's fine by me. That means we need to keep pushing. Everyone is still talking about our latest addition to the Daily Wire, Isabel Brown. Her brand new show premieres this fall exclusively on Daily Wire Plus, but do not worry. There's plenty more on the way as we celebrate a decade of the Daily Wire. That's right. We're celebrating our victories because who doesn't love winning? But we are also fighting harder than ever. The libs want to silence your voice. We make it louder. They want open borders. We demand law and order. They want drag shows for kids. We make documentaries to expose the truth. They cancel. We create. This is the time to be part of a community that fights back and wins. Go to dailywireplus.com. Join the fight today. My favorite comment on Friday was from J30K, who says, if there is a victim list, there should be a client list. Yes, of course. And it's kind of silly and I think obtuse when people say, well, look, we looked through the files, there's no list. When we ask for the client list, we're not saying I want page 352 of the files, where on nice lined ruled paper, it says number 1, Bill Gates, number 2, Prince Andrew, number 3. We're saying there obviously is a list because there were associates of Epstein. You can't tell me there's no list. I can start the list for you right now. Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Les Wexner. What do you mean there's no list? No, there are people. We want you need to write the list. But you can't tell. How is there a victim list if there's no client list? Very well put. Very, very well put. Okay. Speaking of illegals, great news out of President Trump's Department of Education. They have ended free tuition for illegal aliens. Now, this came out. The Department of Ed says that they're going to revoke a Clinton-era rule that allows illegal aliens to access taxpayer funds for technical and career schools. So vocational training, since Bill Clinton, illegal aliens have been able to get taxpayers to foot the bill for their education. I think a lot of people, even before they celebrate that Trump has revoked this, a lot of people are going to be shocked that this was ever in place in the first place. Linda McMahon, post-secondary education is funded by the federal government should benefit American citizens, not illegal aliens. Under President Trump's leadership, hardworking American taxpayers will no longer foot the bill for illegal aliens to participate in our career, technical, or adult education programs or activities. Okay, good stuff. Obviously true. Ultimately, what we want is for the Department of Education to be abolished. Linda McMahon has said, this is our department's last mission, and it's the most important one yet. We got to shut it down. It's been around since Jimmy Carter. It's been bad for education. We're going to get rid of it. But all along the way, there is a lot to be done here. And I think this has been the story of the first 6 months of the Trump administration, is a lot of it is just showing Americans how much bad stuff the government is doing and for how long. That was the story with USAID. The story with USAID was not some ideological fight over whether or not the United States should be involved in global affairs. As I pointed out many times, President Trump has an imperial political vision. He is not a yeoman farmer who wants to ignore the rest of the world. He wants to annex Greenland. He wants to invade Mexico. He wants trade deals. He wants global involvement. He just wants it to be in America's interest. So when Trump and Elon go to shutter something like USAID, it's not because they don't want us to be involved in the rest of the world. It's because USAID was funding, on the farcical end of things, transgender ballet recitals in the Philippines. And on the worse end of things, campaigns to overthrow conservative governments around the world. He's just showing people, look at that. Look at what we're funding over here. Look at what we're funding over there. Well, same thing here with the Department of Education. Just to show you how bad the immigration issue has gotten. Did you taxpayers know that we are currently funding education for illegals? Did you know we've been doing it for 30 years? Oh, you didn't know that? You were already anti-immigration? Now you see that? It's, I think, a way of building support. In any case, before the Department of Ed is completely destroyed, there's a lot of subsidiary programs that need to be wrecked in the meantime. Okay, speaking of young people, horrifying story out of France. And I guess the theme of the past 2 weeks is, are you really surprised? Did you really expect something different? It's always the ones you most expect. A French LGBT activist and a left-wing political party leader has been caught running a child rape ring. I don't know how else to put it. I'm trying. There's no way to sugarcoat that. This guy, Pierre-Alain Courtineau, is a former candidate for the far left-wing party La France Insoumise, France in Rebellion. during the 2021 regional elections, former head of an LGBT LMNOP activist group. He is now being accused. He has allegedly run a darknet child rape network. This, according to the French newspaper Le Parisien. They describe some of the videos here. And me, I can read a lot of horrible stuff and keep my composure. This had me fantasizing about ripping this guy's head off and like torturing him along the way. I mean, the stuff he is accused of doing is the worst stuff imaginable. So we'll just leave it at that. Now, what does this mean for politics? What is implied here, I think, from this local weird sex story, horrifying, weird criminal sex story out of France, has a lot of implications for the American political order. What is implied here is we need to be a lot less tolerant of a lot more things. A lot less tolerant of a lot more things. For one, pornography, because a lot of this story centers around pornography. Pornography does nothing good. It only does bad things. And we have the political power to restrict that or ban that outright. And we have for most of American history. There's no First Amendment violation. There were some stupid court cases in the 20th century that pretended that the First Amendment protects porn. It doesn't. We should get rid of it. There's no benefit. There's only negative consequences. We should just get rid of it. And if we were a serious country, we would. This has implications for us being much less tolerant of license on the internet. License. People just doing whatever they want on the internet. You should not be able to do whatever you want on the internet. You're not allowed to do whatever you want in the physical public square. You're not allowed to do whatever you want even in wide open land in the middle of the country. You can't do literally whatever you want. There's nothing good. There's nothing particularly American. There's certainly nothing conservative about just doing whatever you want in the physical world. Why would we allow you to do that in the virtual, digital world either? This is going to contradict a lot of what right-wingers have been saying about it's really more libertarians. We need a free and open internet where you can do whatever you want. No, not really. If that's not good for you in the physical world, why would that be good for you in the digital world? We need to restrict behavior on the internet, just as we do in the physical world. Homosexual adoption, part of what he's accused of doing pertains to homosexual adoption. There's no good reason to have homosexual adoption. There are 32 some odd couples for every one newborn baby who's put up for adoption. There is no shortage of couples who want to adopt newborn babies. Later on down the line, for kids who've been taken out of homes, who've been put in foster care, who are teenagers, who have behavioral problems, yes, there are problems getting those people adopted. That's a completely separate issue, and there are totally different reasons for that. But we're talking about adoption, newborn baby adoption. There is no shortage of couples. There is no reason, there is no argument, even from a consequentialist or utilitarian perspective, to allow two fellas or two chicks even to adopt a kid. It's not good. If you think that men and women each have something to contribute to raising a child, if you think that neither men nor women are totally superfluous, then there is no way that you can back homosexual adoption. Unless you think that adoption is really just about the fun and the desires of parents rather than kids. If parents are the people who or if adults rather, they're not even parents, if the adults have the rights when it comes to child rearing and not the kids, okay, then I guess that's your view. That's not how I view it. I don't think kids are a handbag to be purchased at the Fendi store, okay? I think they're proper subjects with rights. They're not commodities to be bought and sold based on the whims of people with disordered desires. So serious implications there for homosexual adoption. And left-wing politics broadly. Is anyone surprised that this guy was an LGBT activist? How many LGBT LMNOP activists get caught doing this stuff? A disproportionate number. It's not all of them, but it's a disproportionate number. How many of the people who get caught doing this stuff are involved in left-wing institutions? A disproportionate number. It's not all of them. Everyone's going to point to some pastor, some priest, some conservative who ended up doing lots of terrible things. Yeah, of course, it's a fallen world. That happens. But look at the numbers, guys. It's not the churches that are primarily driving this. It's not the religious institutions. It's not the conservatives. It's left-wing institutions. It's left-wing politics, because left-wing politics, when a right-winger gets caught doing something evil and horrible, especially pertaining to weird sex stuff, it's an aberration. It's contrary to the right-wing political philosophy or ideology. When the left gets caught doing this, it is the fulfillment of their ideology. They believe that this stuff is good in practice. There are weird essays that U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders wrote back in the 60s about how we need to allow little children to experiment sexually because they're sexual creatures. And pornography should be mainstreamed. Bernie Sanders wrote this stuff. This is part of their ideology. When they act out on that, they are fulfilling their ideology. Nobody but should be surprised. Politically speaking, well, all these things I've said, restricting porn, restricting license on the internet, homosexual adoption, left-wing politics, all these things. You're going to say, well, that's unrealistic to try to stop all that stuff. Hold on. I'm not saying we can totally eradicate evil, but we can do a lot to mitigate the risk. If we took a serious stand on pornography, on radical left-wing politics even, on marriage, on the way children are adopted, if we did that, you would drastically reduce the occurrences of this kind of thing. This guy, Pierre-Alain Coutinho, if he did what he is accused of doing, he did it with the support of the French political order. That's how it happened. So we need to reduce that support. One last point on this very issue. Speaking of sex crimes, AOC has called President Trump a rapist. She says, wow, who would have thought that electing a rapist would have complicated the release of the Epstein files? AOC better watch out here. ABC News back in December had to pay $15 million to Trump because one of its hosts, George Stephanopoulos, called Trump a rapist. You can't do that. That's defamatory because Trump is not a rapist. Now, AOC will probably get away with it because no one thinks she's competent to stand trial. Because no one really thinks the lights might be on, but I'm not sure that anyone's really home. However, that is seriously defamatory as determined by a judge, as determined by a legal process. 15 million reasons why you should not call Trump a rapist because he isn't one. So that goes nowhere. And then Gavin Newsom, his press team has called Stephen Miller a fascist cuck. You know, Stephen Miller, he was deputy White House chief of staff, one of the guys behind the immigration policy, really, really smart, effective leader in the MAGA movement. Newsom says this fascist cuck in D.C. continues to assault on democracy and the Constitution and his attempt to replace the sovereignty of the people with autocracy. Sorry, the Constitution hurt your feelings, Stephen. Cry harder. This is showing you that Gavin Newsom is going to have a tough time running for president. This reminds me of when Marco Rubio was running for president against Trump in 2016. And in order to beat Trump, he tried to do a Trump impression. You remember he did this whole routine about Trump has little hands?
He's always calling me Little Marco. And I'll admit, the guy, he's taller than me. He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". Have you seen his hands? And you know what they say about men with small hands? You can't trust them. You can't trust.
Okay, you know what they say about guys with small hands, and they can't trust them. That's funny. So Trump at the time wrote this up. He goes, oh yeah, I saw little Marco doing his Rickles routine. It's Don Rickles routine. Yeah, it didn't work. And it didn't work. And Rubio got out of the race shortly after this. And now Rubio's the man. Everyone loves Marco Rubio, including Trump. And he's doing a great job, and he's being seriously floated as a presidential contender in 2028. Because now Marco's just doing Marco. Back there, he was trying to do Trump. You're not going to out-Trump Trump. And here, that's what Newsom's trying to do. Newsom is trying to copy the right. He's doing everything that the American right was doing 10 years ago. He's starting a podcast. He's become a debate me bro guy. Hey, come on, debate me, bro. Why don't you debate me? And now he's using this word cuck, which cuckold is a very funny term. It goes for the Italians. It's a very old insult, cornuto. Call a guy cuck, you know. And the American right has adopted it in the last 10, 20 years. But it doesn't work when Newsom does it. He's trying to do an impression of MAGA, and it is not working. It's not working for them. You gotta do you. You gotta be you if you want people to vote for you. The problem is the Democrats right now don't know who they are. Okay, today's Music Monday. The rest of the show continues now. Do not miss it. Become a member. Use code KnowlesKennedy at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.